Hey, Goddess. Welcome to our podcast. We are Wendy Lou and Angie K, two goddesses on a journey of awakening and embodiment together, traveling hand in hand through the trials and tribulations of this roller coaster ride we call spiritual awakening and ascension.
It was only a matter of time before we started our own podcast to share what we've learned along the way as energy practitioners and spiritual entrepreneurs.
Join us twice a month as we explore metaphysical topics, spiritual awakening, collective energy updates, spiritual entrepreneurship, the divine feminine and divine masculine, and all things goddess.
Our vision and mission is to provide a safe space to express the unspoken topics of awakening the divine feminine. Our desire is to heal the generations of shame, secrecy, and illusion that have shrouded the divine feminine teachings. So we hope you join us here on our podcast.
Hey, Goddess. Welcome to today's episode. We are going to talk about post Lionsgate, the collective ascension update. And we are super excited about this because if you were on the planet, you might have noticed that the Lionsgate was intense AF. Am I allowed to say? Am I
Just a
allowed to
little
say
bit.
just a tiny bit? And then just to make things even more amplified, the full moon was the next day, right? We had the height of the Lionsgate on the 8th, and the full moon came in on the 9th. And today, as we're recording this, is the 12th, and the Lionsgate portal is officially closing today. That does not mean that this energy is gone, though. We are launched into a whole new, so many people out there talking about we are on a whole new timeline. A lot is going on, and it is evidenced in even our individual personal lives, right? With the people we encounter, the people we, surround ourselves with, are definitely expressing this new timeline. And so, yeah, so let's just get into it because I feel like this is going to be valuable information for everybody. I feel like there are a lot of people out there who are like, is anybody else feeling like this? I promise you, we're all feeling this, and we are in a huge, huge new, I feel like we're in the integration phase of this new timeline, which happens every time we shift big, right? We have to adjust to that new frequency. And so here we are. But we want to focus on what the divine masculine is also expressing right now, or they're also experiencing, because I feel like we haven't really touched on that too much. But now the men are feeling it. And so, what have you noticed, Angie, as far as the divine masculine? Like, what are they going through right now?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's been huge for them. I feel like just the ones that in my life that I'm close to and then my clients. I feel like they're each going through their version of our embodiment process that we've been going through, especially those that have experienced awakening, but maybe not embodiment. Because like you and I talk about all the time, there's the mental side of awakening, which is
Hmm.
like, oh yes, I understand that these mental concepts and constructs are the truth, but we hold them mentally, and because they're mental, we can still hold opposing ideas at the same time. And it's okay. But until you
Hmm.
really embody something, like take on the full embodiment of it, then those opposing constructs can no longer exist in your field. And so that's what's happening with the men. I feel like maybe they've been able to hold some of those
Hmm.
opposing beliefs. And then what happens when you have an opposing belief and you're embodying a new belief, you have an ego death because the
Absolutely.
ego, the identity, and the belief system comes from the ego. And so when something that isn't truth falls away for a higher truth, then you go through either you can go through a huge, massive ego death, or you can go through a small
Hmm.
ego death, right? It just depends on how big and how important that truth was to you in your life. And so many people have opposing beliefs about spirituality because of religion, right? Like
Oh boy.
across the board.
We could do a whole
Um,
video series
you,
on
we
the role of
could,
religion in this world of
yeah,
religion. Yeah.
really. And until we really have to integrate what religion meant to us, what it means, it's a really a stepping stone, right? Because it doesn't really take you to the ultimate truth. Most religions, I know the one I eventually stumbled upon, before I kind of stepped out of the realm of religion altogether, it really did take you to the ultimate reality. But in a mental way, for me, it wasn't an embodied truth yet.
Mhm.
And so I feel like that what the men are going through is anywhere where they're embodying this higher truth now, they're having to let the old truth fall away. And then there's that moment. And what happens is your ego side will argue for the old truth. So you may find
Right.
yourself in an argument where
Right.
you're trying to stand up for, but then you feel it feels like sand falling through your hands because you realize you have nothing to stand on. You're
Mhm.
arguing for nothing. So we've all seen people do this, right?
Yeah.
And we're sitting there going, why are we arguing about? There's no
Right.
argument, right?
We've all gone through it, right? And it
Yeah,
sometimes we call it, we've referred to it as a previous self dying, right? That's what an ego death is that version of you that was maybe not resisting integrating, but like you said, holding it in the mental so that you didn't have to let go of the old just yet. And we are always divinely guided in that, right? Like, I always tell people, don't ever think you're behind or you've missed something, right? We have such FOMO on this planet, right? Like we think we've missed the gateway or whatever. You're going to let go exactly when you're supposed to. This just happens to be this big gateway where it that kind of situation where you were holding on to, and I feel like religion is a big one that they're letting go of, but it can no longer exist in this new frequency, holding it in the mental. And so, yeah, like you said, the men are really integrating and coming to embodiment of it, which we've already been through.
yeah.
Largely as a divine feminine collective, we've already been through it.
Yeah. One thing, opposing belief that I see people holding on to is clients. I've got family members that do this is, I'm completely taken care of by source. They know it, right? They know I'm a completely abundant being. I always have everything I need, yet
Hmm.
they need the day job. They can't let it go.
Hmm.
And so they can hold that. I've watched people hold that opposing belief for years, decades, right? And until they really embody that. And in order to embody that particular one, I feel like you do have to step away and see that you're okay. Like something needs to
Hmm.
happen. Sometimes people will get laid off or fired or
The house
whatever,
needs to
so that
fall,
they
right?
can see, oh, look, I always was okay.
Hmm.
I just believed I needed that external thing created some sort of stability for me, but no, the stability was always internal. So everything always turns you back in. No, it was always
Hmm.
inside you.
And
Right?
what's
Like what's the
going
Dorothy? She clicks
within,
her heels like the
right? There's
the
no place
power was
like
always
home.
inside you, or yeah, there's no place like
Right.
home.
You had the
But there was
power
a
all
meme going
along.
around for a while with the red shoes and it said, "Here, the power was yours all along," or whatever. I can't remember where that comes up in the movie, but I feel like every piece of the ascension journey takes you back to that every time. Like,
Mm.
no, it was never outside of you, the power.
Right. And it's funny. It's at the end because it's funny that a theory goes around that Glinda was actually the bad guy because she could have told Dorothy from the beginning what she needed to do. But I think of it as the ultimate higher self, right? Like she knew Dorothy had to travel the journey. She had to travel the road to learn the lessons herself. She could have told her right away, "Oh, you have the slippers." The second, she had the slippers on, "Oh, you can just go home now." Then she wouldn't have had that adventure. She wouldn't have grown, she wouldn't have had any soul growth. And so people are like, oh, Glinda's the bad guy. I'm like, what if Glinda's just the tough love, higher version of you that knows you can do it and knows what you're going to gain from it? And so, yeah, we could get all the answers right away, but what would be the point of that? We came down here on purpose to actually experience it. So, yeah, that is kind of fun. We have the power all along. Absolutely.
I think that's what the men are going through is realizing that anywhere that they've externalized their power, they're taking it back now. But that
Mhm.
comes with, I mean, a lot of responsibility. Like you and I know because of our experiences around this, around experiencing
Yeah.
13th density consciousness, we understand that there's so much responsibility that comes along with that, along with every
Right.
time we're reclaiming more and more of our power, which is amazing. And that's the whole point of the journey, right? Is to realize like it always
Remember.
was
Yeah.
yours. And remember that you have the power all along. You never had to externalize it, but we did, like you said, we came to forget and externalize our power and do all these things. But I think that's where the men are really at, is they're bringing that back home and then they're having to go through that responsibility of, oh, wow, I can't externalize my power to this job, to this religion, to this belief system, to this anything. And
Right.
it feels very destabilizing for the men right now because it's like your whole, everything that you counted on as your reality just crumbles.
Right.
It's like remember my my rocks of belief from I think I've told that I always talk about the rocks of belief, but it's in the river. So there's these rocks of belief, and like for like when you're in that rushing river and you just need some comfort, you hold on to some sort of a belief because it brings you comfort because it's like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, I can always count on that. It might not be serving
Yeah,
you, or
that'll
it might be
never
for a
go away.
time,
Right.
but I'll never lose this rock. And then I
Hmm.
won't have to be free flowing down the river, feeling completely destabilized without a life jacket, right? So you're holding onto this rock, but then just like in like what's happening in the collective, especially for the men post Lionsgate, the rock just disappears, right? Maybe it just like disintegrates, and then you're just floating, free floating down the river. And you
Right.
a lot of times, and it's actually better if you don't, but I think what happens is people immediately search for a new belief. And it's
Right.
fine. If
We
it's a
rock.
higher truth that's serving you, great. And if you can notice that you're doing it and allow yourself to just feel destabilized for a moment, allow yourself to just know your ultimate reality is you're completely safe. So if you can just
Mhm.
let the destabilization take place and not immediately have to have a new belief system, that's actually better. And I can completely relate to both because I know for
That's a
me too, like
process, right, to get there.
reaching for
Yeah,
the next little stepping stone, the next little higher truth, I'll call it
literally
the next
stepping stone.
nugget.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's fine too. Either way
Yeah.
is fine as long as it's a higher truth that is serving you.
Right, right. A lot of times we
Yeah.
can reach for that lateral. It's a lateral move, but I do feel like for the
Yeah,
most
true.
part it's definitely the next step. And men have that programming too. Like it's a powerful, deeply seated programming of they have to be the providers, right? And even though we've had feminism, right, for the last 50 years, it still is ingrained in them. And not to say that that's not a masculine trait, but maybe that programming has kept them imprisoned in this belief, right? In this very small box where, oh, they have to be the provider. I mean, I'll tell you, I'll share a bit of personal information is, I got divorced last year, and my ex has come to the realization that he was following the money, right? Because he had that deep programming that he had to provide. That was his main mission, to provide, to provide, to provide. Well, that's not my love language, is to be provided for. My love language is quality time and touch and right. And so he was always out providing and doing a great job doing that. And meanwhile, I was deprived, right? And so the relationship fell apart because he was, and not only because of this, right? We definitely both had our things, but that was one of the reasons. And he had to come to that realization, and he absolutely did. And now he's working on healing that, on embodying a new frequency without that programming of the providing has to come first, over and above the partner, and over and above the actual, like caregiving, like spending time and everything. And so just, yeah, just that's kind of a personal example, but that's what's coming through for me is and my ex-husband is really, really on this path now, and I'm really proud of him, and he's doing great, and he's doing a lot of the healing work. And so, just that realization that he was chasing the money because in his brain the most important thing was to provide for the family. And that was not only detrimental to the family, but to himself, right? And again, I'm not blaming that solely, absolutely, but that definitely was a factor. And so that's
Yeah.
where he's at right now, right? And I do feel like he's kind of in this group that is kind of leading the way for the masculine. I see him, being in that role. So it's really beautiful. It's beautiful to watch the men that we care about actually, hit these milestones kind of, instead of, I've had men in my life who just fell away instead. And that's sad too, but everybody has their own journey, and we can't force it. We were definitely getting into a space of judgment, and not you and I specifically, but women, feminines were getting into a space of judgment, and it was all over the internet, right? Oh, the men just need to heal. Well, the men just heal already, and that is not helpful energy. That is not giving them space. That is not, holding space for them to do this work. But it's like now we need to be in a space of compassion and I hate to say tolerance, but right, tolerance and just really truly giving them space, instead of being like, oh, would they just heal already? Like we just got so kind of catty about it. And I was right there too. And I'm not lumping you in that category. I think you definitely did better than I did, but I was definitely out there going, oh, I just wish the men would heal. And, I have 4 sons. And so putting that on them was not, it was a heavy energy versus giving them space. This is a really
Yeah,
big topic, so we
it's
could talk
so
about it for
big.
hours. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, huge. Yeah, I think the thing that I want to add is I've found myself now, and I think I was having that feeling before because it did feel so frustrating. But now I'm actually feel like I can be helpful in this space of watching them go through these ego death processes because I've been there and I can hold space without my ego flaring back now at this point, which
Right.
is
Yeah.
great. I
Because we
don't
had that ego
feel
death,
like I
right?
like, yeah, because I've had it. I don't feel like I need to over explain myself and say why I feel like my position is correct. It just is like
Mhm.
I just have completely embodied it. And so it's just kind of like I don't need validation around it. So I
Right.
can just hold space in a completely different way. And it makes sense why everything happens as it does. We can't all go through ego death at the same time. We would just be completely demolished. And
Hmm.
so we just, if one can hold space for the other, that's coming from a place of, I have already embodied this truth and I don't need validation around it. You're holding the field, right? Like the energetic field contains the consciousness. And so
Hmm.
you're giving a safe space, especially if a man is going through this, you're giving them a safe space to allow that to unravel. And they have something to fall back on. Whereas, like you and I have talked about, when we went through it, we were largely alone in the process, right? We had each other, but at the same time, since
That was
a
about
lot
it.
of us were going through it at the same time, a lot of the women that we're connected to, we didn't really have someone to fall back on that was holding the space for us from an
Right.
elevated perspective, right? We were all elevating at that same level. So we were holding
Mm.
for each other, but it was like in real time, right?
Right.
So now,
Pioneers.
yeah, we were pioneering it. Thank you. That's the perfect word. So now the men have this opportunity to actually have a safer, it feels safer for them to, because we're so sure and embodied in who we are now.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
can also step through and say, okay, it's like you're doing good. Like it's safe to be sure and embodied in this new space, even though it feels entirely different in this other space, right? Because we were the ones that carved the path. Everything happens, we say it in every episode, right? Everything starts
Everything
with the
starts with the
feminine.
feminine.
Right? I think that should be our tagline. Everything starts with the feminine, even birth. So the
Hmm.
feminine energy is the energy that powers everything. It's the
Yep.
powerhouse, right? So every single manifestation, single thing you see in your reality began with the feminine because first it needed energy behind it.
Right.
So that's,
We're like the engine of the car, right? And then the masculine is like the
yeah,
gear shift, like actually putting it into drive and
yeah,
actually moving forward is the masculine. And I do feel like, everything that we have been doing has literally been stable. I keep getting this phrase like stabilizing the field for the men to come through. And that's the feminines, that's our job, right? As feminines. And so the men have been in a deep healing and they're not coming completely out of it yet. And we're always going in and healing, but the men have really been in kind of a cocoon in a feminine energy. And so that's when we step up, and we don't do this consciously, right? But that's when the feminines then stepped up and started to stabilize that field for them so that they could really clearly and, without too much, interruption or whatever, do that healing work. And so the feminine stabilizes the field. I mean, you can't convince me otherwise. That's what we do.
yeah. I think in this incarnation, in our whatever, we signed up for, each of us individually and collectively, I think that was what it was. And I think there were other incarnations where, and we all know because we have all these examples in history where it was largely men who were responsible for, spiritual development and spiritual growth and sharing spiritual concepts. But in this reality here and now, it's all women, or
Hmm.
mostly. I shouldn't say it's all. There's a lot of men sharing spiritual concepts, of
Right.
course,
But it's
but
primarily
it's
women are
it's
finding their
very
voices in that. Yeah.
female dominated in this, yeah, this
Yeah.
process of people that are actually out there sharing and speaking. So yeah, it's an interesting flip switch of things, and I like it. I mean, I think
Hmm.
it just speaks to evolution and how this is the turning of the tides of that kind
Right.
of um yeah, that kind of
Yep.
realm. So I think
Yeah.
it's awesome.
And the universe always balances itself, right? So it's the balancing of that. And not to say, I've got, there's always people that are going to come at us and say things like, well, you just want the women to rule the world. And we really don't. I promise you, we don't want that. We don't want to just keep trading places, dominating over each other. We don't want that. We want the men to rise. We want the women to rise. We want that energy to be balanced so that we can be hand in hand, and creating, I don't like to say ruling, right? But creating the world together, because the energies need each other. We can't create solely in feminine. All we can do is conceive, right? We'd never actually make anything in the physical if we didn't have any masculine energy. And so the masculine is the masculine is the confidence and the actual, bringing something into fruition. And so you think about too the time we're coming out of, like the lion Leo season, right? And the Lion's Gate is very masculine, courageous energy. And so it makes sense that the men would have been kind of pushed through into this next phase from that energy. And it was really, really intense. Like, we did a Lion's Gate video. So if you want that information too, it's never too late. I think we always come upon videos at the right time. So if you feel called to watch our Lion's Gate, so you know kind of what that was bringing through, that's in here as well. So, and then watch this one again. So you
Yeah.
get a real good feel for what's coming. So yeah, the men
Yeah.
are really responding to this portal.
They are. I feel like what people were coming to me and saying was they were exhausted or they were
Hmm.
having huge energy flows of, you know, spontaneous energy coming through that they just were bouncing off the walls. So it was kind of
That was
both
my
at the same
experience. Yeah.
time, like no one could get quite enough sleep and then, exhausted during the day, tons of energy coming through. But there was a lot going on there with that full moon, the Lionsgate. It was Mercury in retrograde. It was a huge
Mercury was
portal.
retrograde until
It was just like,
yesterday.
let's
Yeah.
throw in a couple of other things here. Like,
Well, and there's like three
what else
planets
can we think
retrograde in
of?
Aries. Chiron is
Yeah,
retrograde in Aries till like
Chiron.
March.
Thank you. That was coming
Chiron.
through Chiron. So the wounded healer, and
Absolutely.
that's the core wound.
Right. It's the
And it's
childhood
not like
wound.
I mean, it's something that you really learn to work with and live with. It's not like something that you're just like, all right, done with that, done
Right.
with my
Woo!
Chiron. I mean, over time, you realize there's never anything to fix,
Right.
right? Like nothing about you is broken. There's nothing to fix. So the word healing in that embodiment of it, right? If we're talking about embodiment, is like you realize that it has a totally different meaning.
It's
Healing just
remembering,
means
right?
removing whatever obstacles are in between you and what it is that you're trying to create. That's all really that it is. It's just between
Hmm.
you and that. And so any obstacles or challenges or um, like we were talking about incongruencies in the mind, right? Like holding up two opposing beliefs at the same time. That stuff comes up because if you're trying to create a certain manifestation and holding two opposing beliefs, that manifestation cannot come through. And so one will get knocked out because every manifestation exists at a higher frequency. And so if you're moving from one frequency checkpoint to another, whatever's in between that isn't taking you to that higher frequency, which is all based on belief, has got to
Hmm.
go.
Yep.
So it's healing. I mean,
Yep.
if you think of healing in that sense, it's just, hey, here's that thing. What do you want to do
Right.
about it this time? It could be the
It's
same thing that you've looked at
right. It's
9,000
the
times,
yeah, it's the
but it's like,
spiral.
how
It's
do
the
you want to
upward
see it
spiral.
this time? And then, oh, okay, checkpoint. All right. We're
Hmm.
releasing the opposing belief, and now we've moved up in frequency.
Right. And it just comes
So,
down to awareness, right? It's more of a feminine process, right? That coming into awareness of, oh, well, it's a microsecond, right? Where you can shift from holding on to the two into more into the newer high vibrational one, and then that old one starts to go. And sometimes it's instantaneous. Like you and I have had experiences where it's like from 1 second to the next, all of a sudden something's gone, and then you're integrating. And those can be the kind of abrupt, situations. But for the most part, it is a process. But it really just comes down to awareness of who you really are. You're not, yes, we are souls having a human experience, but we are human. And we're meant to experience being human and all that that offers, right? And that's the positive and the negative. But if you think of it this way, it's like if we didn't have any negative, how would we even know that the positive was positive? Because we wouldn't have any gauge or any any way to tell that oh, this is what joy feels like. We know what joy feels like because we know what devastation feels like. I mean, that's the whole point. And we are moving into, I firmly believe we're moving, we've been in a reality that was mostly devastation with a little bit of joy sprinkled in. We're shifting now into the converse of that, right? The opposite of that, where it's going to be a world, and we're not there yet, but we're getting there. This is what we're bringing through with this Christ consciousness and the divine feminine leading the way, is that heart-centered living. And heart-centered is going to be mostly in joy with some, challenges sprinkled in. And so that's where we're shifting. And it takes all of us doing, right, all the cogs in the machine to do their job
Yeah.
and to remember how we are, how we fit together and how we are supposed to operate as a collective.
Yeah.
But then how do we do that? By healing our own stuff.
Yeah. I definitely front loaded my life with challenges as you're talking. I'm like, yep. So
Yep.
now I get to experience the polarity, right? So, I mean, I think that's a lot of people. They
Absolutely.
realize they were front loaded with challenges, which creates the perfect recipe for awakening because, you really have to, like you said, to experience joy, you have to have devastation. Like all of those things create this perfect recipe for
Hmm.
looking at things and saying, okay, why am I not creating a joyful life? Why would I decide that I have to create from some sort of template that I don't ever remember being part of, right? The
Right.
template of life that we're born into that's like, you do what we do as a family because this is tradition and this is how you show up and this is how we do this and
Right.
this is the person that you marry and this is how you raise your kid. And then if you have shakeups, like you said, like devastation, it gives you a platform to look and shift and look at things differently. Say, how can I create joy in my life? What is dissatisfying to me right now?
How can I make room?
Without those dark nights of the soul, how do we ever grow? I mean, really, they are one of the most beautiful gifts that we have on this journey, even though they are the most devastating, intense, dark places to go, but really they ultimately lift us up into where we're meant to be. What were our soul contracts? What did we
Hmm.
actually come here to do? Because there are actually things that you came here to do in this life versus just thinking it was just get it, eat, sleep,
Right.
die, pay taxes.
Work,
How's that
die.
saying
Right.
go, right?
Yeah.
Eat, sleep,
Yeah.
pay taxes, and die, or whatever. There's like important things that your soul contracted with in this life. And sometimes people will default because of their family programming, they'll default to like, say, the safe job or the safe partner when the universe has been showing them all along this person is your ideal partner, right? And it could be something that they're like, oh, no, 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 I'm not going there because of what people would think or my family or whatever. Or
Right.
this career path is your ideal career path, the one that you actually came to explore from the highest timeline, highest level of expression of you. But people will say, oh, no, 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 that's not a viable career path.
Right. Nobody
So
in your
they won't
family's
go
ever
there.
done that. So why
Yeah.
would you go that way, right? Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I was told my whole childhood that, that being, and at the time it was being famous, right? Being famous, being rich, whatever. Oh, that's for other people. That's not for us. And
Yeah.
so I just gave up on all my dreams for a long time. And I feel like I kind of crammed, I feel like I was like in zombie mode for a good 40 years. And then I kind of crammed a bunch of devastation in the last decade or so. But I had to, I was resisting it. I was in resistance of experiencing it. But then what I realized is because I didn't allow myself to experience devastation, I also didn't allow myself to experience joy. And I always say I kind of flatlined my way through about 4 decades of life, right? Without feeling much of anything and just getting through. And that's not what we're intended to do. And it's not worth it to avoid feeling bad. It's not worth it.
Yeah. So many people just get on autopilot and live just a numbed out experience, like what you're saying. It's like they come
And
home,
we
they
all
think of
know
whatever
people,
they can do to numb out. And this isn't a judgment. We're just pointing out that
right?
this is,
We've
I'm
done
just
it.
pointing out right now, this is reality of our world. It's like it's so painful to go to the job all day that doesn't align, that they come home and think of the first way that they cannot feel that that's not aligned, and that is, I'm going to have a glass of wine. I'm going to have a cocktail when I walk in the door. I'm
Or
going to
worse stuff, right?
make food because that, I mean, and of course, food we need food, but I'm saying people will make comfort food every single day
That
because
was
they
yeah,
need
that
to be
was mine.
comforted. And so
Right.
they'll make, unhealthy food choices because they want comfort. And then they'll turn on the TV and just completely check out for the night, watching TV, and then do the same thing over and over again.
Scroll.
And they never feel anything. And so they're just completely living in numbness. And anytime they start to feel something, watch yourself, anyone that's listening. And I'm not saying anyone is doing this or not doing this, what I'm sharing. But what I'm saying is, if you reach for something immediately the second you start to feel, think about, wait a second, why do I have to have something so that I don't feel, whether that's sugar
Mhm.
or alcohol or TV or I need to call someone immediately. I got to get my mind off it. I got to get on the phone. I need
Right.
to be around people.
Even working out can be used in that way, right? Even though that's good for you, we can
Definitely.
use things like that to as a coping mechanism to stay numb, to stay distracted
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
feeling.
Whatever you're doing to avoid feeling, it's always important to look at. And then you had that great thing that your friend John would say, which was, what are you avoiding feeling? To ask yourself in any given moment or even
Mhm.
once a day, what am I avoiding feeling right now? And
Yeah.
let it come to you and trust whatever comes to you. And then just let yourself feel that. Like sometimes it's just like for me, like disappointment, like I don't like the feeling of it. It was from my upbringing. It was a big, huge thing
Mm.
in my family with disappointment. You're being so disappointing. So for
Oh,
me, it became the taboo emotion. Like you never want to disappoint
oh
anyone,
yeah.
right? So for me, like it's big for me to allow myself to just be like, all right, that's disappointing and just feel that, right?
Hmm.
So um so yeah, so that's one, and everybody has their thing. That was like the
Right.
thing that they felt was the most shameful
Right.
emotion, right?
And I
And
think
none of
most
them should
people
be. They're
can,
just all just feelings and emotions,
right.
but we label them with whatever is
We
happening in
do,
our
and we
life is
attach,
worse or better.
right, we attach positive or negative or whatever. And I think for a lot of people, well, for me, it was that it was you weren't allowed to be needy. You weren't allowed to need anything.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't
Mm-hmm.
allowed to need comfort. You weren't allowed to need anything because I came from a big family, a lot of kids. And, my parents did the best they could with what they had, which we say that all the time. And I always get people saying, but this happened and that happened. Yeah. And I write about this in my parenting book too. It's like the boomers generation was the first generation that got into really, really big debt, right? Like before them, their parents, they were paying for really nice houses on, blue collar salaries, and they had beautiful homes, and they had enough money for food and all this stuff. And the boomer generation was really the first one that it was the keeping up with the Joneses, right? Having to have better or more than what you needed. And so it was just a whole mindset that we as Gen X and the next generations are working on healing, right? And I think a lot of people who come into the healing realm, right, too, are like we realize that, okay, first of all, there's nothing wrong with liking nice things and pretty things, but we don't want excess anymore, right? Or the things that we do want, we want them to be good quality instead of just the throwaway, right? The throwaway stuff. And so I think that's a big shift that's going on right now too, that we're seeing. And with the men too, it's like it goes along with that whole providing. My dad was such a good provider. Well, we had, a expensive house that maybe we didn't need. We had expensive cars that maybe we didn't need. But in his mind, in that era, it was needed because everybody else had it. And so to him, it was attached to that provider energy. And so I feel like this generation too, our generation and the younger generation, well, we're trying, right? We're trying to make it easier for our kids' generations, but at the same time, every generation has their thing to heal, has their collective thing that they came in and agreed to heal. And I do think one of our big things as, born in the 60s, 70s, is that keeping up with the Joneses mentality, right? And it's again, that's a very masculine energy. And so we look at what's going through massive healing right now and kind of peeking its head out of this deep healing, this deep feminine energy is this masculine. And I think more and more men now, I'm seeing more and more men out there on the in the social media spaces coming out and talking about this and their own healing and sharing their own experience. And it's beautiful. And I really hope that, because I always say too, I have 4 sons, right? And I talk about this in my book too. It's like men need to see it from men. Like it's great that women are doing it and it's great that moms are doing it and teaching their sons, but ultimately to learn how to be divine masculine, they need to see it from other men. They need to be taught from other men, even just by example. They need to start seeing it in the world. And so I do think that that's a huge shift that we're going through right now. And it's going to be beautiful. I think by the end of this year, like this Lionsgate really, really opened up something big. And like I said, every time I talk about it, and I know it's easy to see, like it doesn't take a psychic to see this, but every time I say Lionsgate, I see that big lion just roaring us into, like almost spitting us out from the roar, right? Like just what did we call it? A herald, right? Heralding this amazing new time that we're in. And the men, honestly, we're at a point now where it's do or die.
Like
It's
time to rise and shine.
time
Yeah.
to rise. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted to
Yeah.
say too, we were talking about, I was just looking at my notes. We were talking about too, it's like you were talking about letting go of these big beliefs, right? As you let go of just holding it in the mental. And you know what? I wake up every day now and think, okay, what foundational belief is going to fall away today? Because it seems to be the norm lately. It's like, oh, well, that doesn't even have to be a truth anymore in my space, right? And so I realize where I've been holding it mentally only because I don't want to let go of the old because it's scary, right? It's scary and you feel like you're free falling, like you were saying, those in between spaces where you don't feel like you have a foundation. Well, it's like we are ultimately always, always, always safe and protected and loved and cherished and guided. And so resisting the fall is only delaying the inevitable. So letting yourself
Yeah.
fall is huge, I think. And the men, that's hard for them to learn, right? It's hard for them to let
Hmm.
themselves fall because they've had to be the rocks, right?
Yeah.
They're the solid foundation for society and for the family, and they're just having to let
Absolutely.
go of a lot of that.
Yep. They are. Yeah. It's big right now for the men.
Hmm.
Yep. We're here for you, men. If you need
We are here. We're
support,
not going to complain anymore that
we
you're not doing the work because
you're
clearly
doing it.
you're doing it. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I feel like that's amazing, and we should wrap it there.
I like it.
So
Yeah,
so yeah, just to recap, big uptick for the men in experiencing, some of these foundational beliefs shifting right now. So if you're a guy that listens to our podcast, thank you for tuning in. And yeah, this is big. Or, for all of the women that listen, which is probably 98% of the people that listen to us,
I would
the men
imagine.
in your life might be going through this. And if you can step away from the frustration around it and try to just
Judgment.
hold
Yeah,
space from the lens of having been through it in your own way and think about the way that you went through it. Yeah, releasing judgment, it's going to help the men move so much faster through this
right.
process, I think. So, all right. Well, thanks for joining us. Tune in to our next episode or catch our prior episodes, and we'll see you
Please do.
in the future.
Bye, goddess.
Bye, goddess.